All the latest here and around the world now with the ITV News.
More chaos in Kabul as thousands besiege the airport, desperate to flee the Taliban. US soldiers closed the gates to stop the growing crush, but many more can't even reach the airport.
They were not letting us, so they started beating on me. My wife came out from the car. She was trying to save me, and then they start beating my wife as well.
Here, hauliers say 10,000 European lorry drivers are needed to avoid food shortages, but the government says no.
What a catch!
Cricket has a winner on its hands with the 100 as its first finals are played today. And a train cruises to destruction in Derbyshire on a mission that a Hollywood star made possible.
This is ITV News with Sameena Ali Khan.
Good evening. It's been another day of relentless fear and frustration at Kabul airport in Afghanistan as thousands of people desperate to flee the Taliban continue to gather there, hoping to be flown to safety. But the airport is becoming a dangerous place with the crush of the crowd and even today, rumours that terrorists would target them. Still, the evacuation of British nationals and Afghans who are eligible to come to the UK goes on. Yesterday, 1,000 people were repatriated. That's the most so far. Martha Fairley reports.
Too young to understand what is happening, children are lifted over the walls of Kabul airport. On social media, more images appearing to show the extreme measures being taken. The situation so dangerous, the US are now advising their citizens not to come to the gates. Some are reported to have died as people crush towards the barriers in the blazing heat. This is the only way out, if you can get here. British Afghan Abdul Qadir Jalil travelled to Afghanistan for his wedding. He's tried to leave twice, but both times was attacked at Taliban checkpoints.
They start firing on our car. The driver's gun hit. And when I came out from the car, I requested that we are a foreign citizen, so we have to go back to our home, but they were not letting us, so they start beating on me. My wife came out from the car. She was trying to save me, and then they start beating my wife as well.
At Brize Norton early this morning, another British military flight arrived, carrying more than 200 people fleeing Afghanistan. Amongst those now being offered help, more than 100 security guards who'd been working here at the British Embassy in Kabul. The UK government changing its position after initially saying they weren't eligible to fly out.
The Western and everyone has to know what is going on here in Afghanistan.
Mermur Solamiri was until this week a well-known presenter on state TV channel RTA's breakfast show. Speaking from hiding, she says the situation under the Taliban is desperate.
I'm not sure that I will be safe in Afghanistan or not. I will be alive in Afghanistan or not. Being a woman who always speak about the women's and always speak about the woman's right, will they accept me or not? Well, this is something very clear. They will not accept me. And I'm sure they don't like people like me, so they will kill me in any way as I see.
The Taliban's acting governor for Kabul has been meeting with ex-President Hamid Karzai and a senior official from the ousted government, giving them assurances over security in the capital. And the Taliban say they're aiming to improve the situation and provide a smooth exit at the airport. But time is running out as British efforts to rescue citizens and those Afghans who helped support them continue. There are just 10 days until the United States deadline to withdraw its troops. The question is what will happen to those who are left behind. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
Here, rallies were held in London and Glasgow today, calling for the government to provide more help for Afghans fleeing the Taliban. Sam Holder joined several thousands who marched on Downing Street this afternoon.
We want peace! We want peace!
We want peace was the chant. The fear is the future of Afghanistan will be anything but. Most of the thousands that turned up in central London today are Afghan. For them, what's happening isn't some distant conflict, it's terrifyingly close.
35 million is without government. It's not acceptable. We want the international community. Please save.
It is a plea of desperation. The protesters want no recognition for the Taliban. They want international pressure to help protect human rights and more refugees allowed into Britain more quickly.
There is a lot of raw emotion here today. Almost everybody I've spoken to has friends or family back in the country.
Some of my cousins, they used to go to school, but now they have stopped their education. They have to stay at home. Their own rights have been taken away from them. Like, all they can do is at home, stay at home, watch the news and listen to Quran.
I have lots of family in Afghanistan that have been threatened by the Taliban. They're living in their houses, scared.
My aunties are teachers. They can't go back to teaching. It's basically ruined the education system for millions of people in a whole nation.
Yeah, cousins and aunts and my grandma.
And what have they said?
We haven't had that much contact with them because of what's going on, but they have said that the situation is very unclear and there is going to be violence soon.
That is a very real fear. Some here fled the Taliban the first time around.
I'm here because they beaten my sister to death. That's why I'm here. They don't give right to women. They don't want our flag. This is my flag. It's not the white one. This is my flag. This is Afghan flag.
This was one of more than 30 protests held by Afghans around the world, begging governments like Britain's not to give up on Afghanistan. Sam Holder, ITV News.
Our political correspondent David Wood is here. And David, what is the government saying to those calling for more help for those Afghans who are desperate for asylum?
It says its full focus right now is getting as many people out as quickly as possible. 1,000 people were flown out yesterday on UK flights. It's likely it'll be a similar number today. It was put to me that the whole evacuation process is really clicking into gear now. But there's also pressure now this evening from the opposition. In the last hour or so, Lisa Nandy, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, has heard reports herself of people being shot at or injured as they tried to get through the checkpoints to Kabul airport. And she's written to the Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, asking him to do more to help them escape Afghanistan.
And David, is the government happy with the US deadline for evacuations, which is just 10 days away?
It's certainly talking to America about this, but I understand that ministers here at least aren't setting a deadline. I'm told there's no fixed end point. But there is this fear as well, both here and in the US, that the situation is changing hour by hour. And I think the reality is as well is, should the Americans leave in 10 days' time, well, the last couple of days, their troops will be packing up. Therefore, the final flights would be disrupted because of that. It may actually be sooner than in 10 days' time. So there's real pressure, at least from backbench MPs, Conservative backbench MPs, for the Americans to extend that deadline. But make no mistake, as soon as the Americans go, there is no way, and the government knows it, that UK forces will be able to keep control of that airport. So the two sides will be talking about that. Boris Johnson has said the resettlement programme will go on for a good period of time. But look, it is already difficult to get people out through that airport. It's likely to become impossible as soon as the Americans leave.
David, thank you very much. In other news, Britain's hauliers have called for the government to provide 10,000 temporary visas for EU lorry drivers to ease the supply shortages that are hitting supermarkets. Freight bosses say the foreign worker permits are needed to cover a huge shortfall of HGV drivers, but so far their pleas are falling on deaf ears. Charanpreet Karia reports.
The industry hit by a perfect storm. A lack of drivers blamed on Brexit and the pandemic. The body which represents the haulage industry has a potential solution. It wants the government to grant 10,000 temporary visas to lorry drivers from the EU.
We know that 14,000 EU nationals have left the UK in the last year, left the logistics sector, HGV driving in the last year. Only 600 have come back. And so to help us tide over until we can recruit and train enough UK nationals, we think this is a reasonable request.
The government previously promised 30,000 temporary visas for agricultural workers to plug a shortfall of fruit pickers. But in this case, they have no plans to introduce a short-term visa for HGV drivers, and they say employers should invest in our domestic workforce instead of relying on labour from abroad.
It's all very well investing in British drivers, but those in the haulage industry say the government's missing the point. They're already doing that, but the problem is the time it takes to train those drivers up. And the real sticking point? Getting them through the tests they need to drive on these roads.
Although the government says they've streamlined that process, Logistics UK estimates that 45,000 HGV driving tests were missed because of the pandemic. And with shortages already showing up on the food supply chain, there's a need for fully trained drivers now. Those shortages hit the chicken industry earlier this week, forcing Nando's to temporarily shut 45 shops. KFC also reported supply chain issues, meaning possible menu changes. Dairy firm Arla described some challenges caused by the lack of drivers. And these supermarkets are just some of those who've been hit too. And it's not just causing empty shelves in supermarkets. This is an industry-wide problem, and demand for limited drivers means wages are being pushed up.
With the rising costs in wages, it's causing a massive problem along the line. Eventually, the customer will have to pay, yeah, because you just can't keep up.
Without driver visas and without British drivers ready to step in, the stalemate looks set to continue. Janampreet Khera, ITV News.
Police are urgently trying to locate a 49-year-old man in connection with 2 murder investigations in the capital. The Metropolitan Police want to question Lee Peacock after a woman was found dead on Thursday night and a man's body was discovered early on Friday, half a mile away. The government has announced that carbon dioxide monitors will be given to schools in England to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. The devices will be used to show where ventilation needs improvement. And a minute's applause has taken place at Liverpool's first home game of the season for a man who has been acknowledged as the 97th victim of the Hillsborough disaster. Andrew Devine was 22 when he suffered life-changing injuries in the stadium crash in 1989. He died in July. Cricket has a new success on its hands with the 100, the latest format of the game. Its first season ends today with the men's final due to start in a few minutes, the women's champions having been decided a short time ago. Stuart Silvers reports.
It's cricket like we've never seen it before. Some of the innovations might not be what MCC members are used to, but there's no doubt the 100 has brought something different. Not least the women's game given high prominence, with games played back-to-back with the men's, including today's final, and attracting a large crowd of all ages. The weather may not have played ball, but there was some great cricket in the match between Oval Invincibles and Southern Brave.
Big shout, a catch, should be taken.
An early wicket for the Brave, but the Invincibles hitting back, setting a target of 122 runs from the 100 balls that give this tournament its name.
3, 2, 1.
So, countdown for a thrilling finish. Well, no, not exactly. The Invincibles bowlers quickly reduced their opponents to 14 for 6.
What a catch!
And there was no way back from that. A one-sided final finished off in style by the Oval Invincibles. The men's final to come. Stuart Silvers, ITV News.
And finally, Tom Cruise has brought another big-budget Hollywood stunt to Britain, where he's filming the next Mission Impossible film. This was the moment a steam locomotive hurtled towards the end of the line over a disused quarry in the Peak District. The stunt was months in the making, but took only seconds to play out as it was filmed by nearby helicopters. And train lovers needn't worry, no real locomotives were injured. The engine was a life-size model built especially for the film. The scene will appear in Mission Impossible 7, which is due to be released next May. And that is it. I'm back with the late news at the earlier time of 20 to 10. I hope you can join me then. For now, though, from the team here, have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.